You can love God deeply and still feel trapped in your own thoughts. You can sit in church, hands lifted, your heart sincere, and then go home and replay the same worries, the same memories, and the same conversations in your head. You can pray at night and still wake up with that tight feeling in your chest, already bracing for the day. And eventually, you start to wonder about things you don't say out loud. Why am I still like this? Why do I keep thinking this way if my faith is real? Did something not change in me the way it was supposed to? What is wrong with me? That quiet confusion can mess with you more than doubt ever could. Because you don't feel far from God, you just feel stuck with yourself. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. There's a reason this happens, and it has nothing to do with weak faith. Most of us were taught, directly or indirectly, that once you come to God, everything inside you should fall into place. New heart, new life, new peace, new habits. Almost like a spiritual reset button gets pressed, and the old struggles quietly disappear. And when that doesn't happen, we don't usually say anything. We just assume we're the problem. That maybe we didn't pray hard enough, or surrender deeply enough, or believe strongly enough. So we try harder. We stay busier. We smile in church and carry the questions home. But spiritually, something really does change instantly. Scripture says you are made new. You belong to God. You are forgiven and held and not abandoned. That part is real, even when you don't feel it. What nobody explains is that your mind doesn't get renewed in the same moment your spirit does. It doesn't forget years of learning how to survive, protect itself, stay alert, or expect disappointment. Scripture even tells us, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, not replaced, renewed. So you end up living in this strange in-between place. Your faith moves forward, but your thoughts lag behind. Your beliefs change faster than your instincts. And that gap, that invisible space, is where so many believers quietly get tired, discouraged, and confused. Your mind is loyal to whatever it has practiced the most. It doesn't care whether those patterns came from childhood, past pain, trauma, or just repetition. It simply follows the strongest paths. So even when you believe new things about God, your thoughts may still default to old conclusions about yourself. That's why you can trust God and still panic, love Him and still feel guarded, believe in grace and still expect rejection. It doesn't mean you're resisting God. It means your mind learned a different language before your faith did. A lot of people feel ashamed about this part, even deeply faithful people, though they rarely admit it out loud. They think, if I really trusted God, I wouldn't still struggle like this. If my faith was genuine, my thoughts would be different by now. So instead of bringing it into the light, they carry it quietly. They worship with questions tucked into their chest. They pray while secretly disappointed in themselves. They start measuring their spirituality by how quickly their mind behaves. But that's not how change actually works. Not spiritually, and not humanly. Prayer connects you to God. Scripture reshapes how you see the world. Both of those are powerful, necessary and sacred. But habits of thought are built slowly, the same way they were formed in the first place, through repetition, through years of emotional learning, through moments that taught your nervous system what to expect and how to respond. Your mind doesn't unlearn all of that just because your heart has changed. That's why the Bible talks so much about renewal, not replacement, renewal. It's something that unfolds over time, layer by layer, decision by decision. It's less like flipping a switch and more like retraining a muscle that's been tight and overworked for years. At first, it resists, it shakes, it gets tired easily. Not because it's broken, but because it's learning a new way to move. And in a moment, I'll show you what that renewal looks like in real life. Not in theory, but in the small, ordinary ways it begins to take shape. Paul wrote about this when he said, we're transformed by the renewing of the mind. Not just by believing the right things, but by learning to think differently. And that process is quieter than most testimonies make it sound. It's choosing to pause before reacting. It's noticing when your thoughts start running ahead of the truth. It's catching the familiar lie before it finishes the sentence. It's not dramatic. It's repetitive. It's sometimes boring. And it's incredibly powerful. Here's the part most people don't tell you. New thoughts often feel weaker than old ones at first. Fear feels natural because you've practiced it and lived it. Doubt feels convincing because you've rehearsed it over and over. Peace feels fragile because it's new and unfamiliar. Faith can feel forced because your mind hasn't felt and learned its shape yet. That doesn't mean peace is fake, it means it's new. New things always feel quieter than old habits until they're reinforced enough to stand on their own. So what do you actually do with that? You don't fight your thoughts like enemies. You train them like students. You gently redirect instead of condemning yourself. You return to truth even when it doesn't feel dramatic. You let scripture become something you sit with, not just something you quote. You give your mind time to catch up to what your spirit already knows. And when you fail, you don't start over from zero. You start again from experience. This is where faith becomes practical, not loud or showy, just steady. You begin to build new pathways the same way the old ones were built, one decision at a time, one honest prayer, one moment of choosing trust when fear feels easier, one quiet refusal to believe the same story about yourself again. Over time, those moments stack, and something shifts, not overnight, but noticeably. You start responding instead of reacting. You pause where you used to spiral. You breathe where you used to brace. And slowly, your mind learns the sound of God's voice the same way it once learned the sound of fear. Not because you forced it, but because you stayed with it, because you practiced it, because you allowed growth to be gradual instead of dramatic. That's real transformation. Not perfection, not instant peace, but in a different direction. So if you love God and your mind still won't let go, don't interpret that as failure. Interpret it as training. You're not behind. You're working through a process, and that process is holy too. If this spoke to you and you want to keep walking through these ideas together, consider subscribing. I share more reflections like this, honest conversations about faith, the mind, and becoming whole.